We're going to stick with New Jersey for just a second. Democrats there not nominating yet another controversial candidate. This time, it's a man with ties to the convicted terrorist behind the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Dr. Adam Hamawy won the Democrat primary in New Jersey's deep blue 12th congressional district last night. And that means he's likely headed to U.S. Congress. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here with my co-host, Kayleigh McEnany. Also joining us today, Molly Line, Fox News correspondent, Kennedy, host of Kennedy Saves the World, and Todd Pyro, co-host of Fox and Friends First. Critics have raised the alarm now over Hamawy's past ties to Islamic cleric Omar Abdel Rahman, also known as the Blind Sheikh, so you probably remember him. Rahman was convicted of inciting the 1993 World Trade Center bombing that killed 6 people. Hamawy testified on a witness stand on Rahman's behalf during that trial. His campaign told Fox past affiliation with Rahman is guilty by association shaming. But the judge who oversaw the case said the two knew each other quite well. Writing in the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Hamawy attended several of Abdel Rahman's sermons, visited the cleric in his home before his trial, and provided him with translation services. Mr. Hamawy began his trial testimony with the traditional Arabic greeting meaning, "Peace be upon you," addressed to the defendant. So, some red flags, apparently not enough to scare off some top Democrats now. Hamawy ran with endorsements of, look on your screen, California Congressman Ro Khanna, Bernie Sanders Senator, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and many others. This has been a long time coming. Andy McCarthy, who was the prosecutor who led the case against Rahman, sounded the alarm on Hamawy's chances last month. Here's what he wrote. Does a sympathizer of an infamous anti-American terrorist, one who went to the trouble of testifying in his behalf, have a realistic shot at becoming elected to Congress in blue New Jersey in 2026? Well, if you dismiss the possibility of Representative Hamawy, Democrat of New Jersey, you haven't been paying attention. Well, we hope you were paying attention now. Todd.
This outcome is directly attributable to an education system that teaches our children to hate America, but also is teaching kids who really did not experience the full impact that so many of us experienced on 9/11. Now you combine that with the fact of this area in New Jersey is home to so many individuals who fled their countries but want to bring their non-traditional American values to that area of New Jersey, and you have a recipe for an attack on traditional American values. And let's take a minute to think about New Jersey for a moment. More than 700 New Jerseyans, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, husbands, and wives, lost their lives on 9/11. And the fact that it was once inconceivable that an individual with ties to somebody who called for jihad to America, well, it's not inconceivable anymore. This is the Democrat Party of 2026. As Andy McCarthy said, this is real and it's happening.
Kennedy.
Yeah, he's complaining that he's guilty by association. Yeah, that's what adulthood is. You are judged by the company that you keep. You are judged by the statements that you make. You are judged by the statements that are made by the people you hang out with. That's called life. That is what we are designed to do. We are designed to make value judgments that we are confronted with every single day. That is how human beings have evolved. That's how we stay alive. And, you know, I'm sad for you guys are both New Jerseyans. I'm sad that people in your state felt that this was the best alternative. And to the Democrat Party there, I would challenge you to maybe come up with better candidates, because all the people that we just showed on the big screen over there, they are structuralists. They want to shake this country to its foundation. They despise the creative engine that is capitalism, that has been tasked with saving humanity. And those people don't care about it. They really despise everything that makes this country incredible, from churning out ideas to innovation, creation, and life-saving. And, you know, they go ahead and they get behind a guy like this. And you can see the failures of structuralism. You can call it democratic socialism. You can call it whatever you want. But the failure every single time is the exact same. So good luck, babe.
You know, Molly, it's hard to have this conversation without considering how many Jewish Americans live both in New Jersey and New York. And the second most, and along with Florida, probably competing along with as many, those three states, as are in Israel. So it is really hard to think about what Kennedy and Todd have just described and the pressure that puts on certain members of our communities.
Well, I think you raise a great point there, that when we look at this race and the outcome of it, it's not just about the big progressive money and the big progressive backing, but the way that the Democratic Party is polling right now when it comes to the subject of Israel. One of the things that brought this candidate to the forefront in this, you know, there were a lot of candidates in this race, and he won there with 28% of the race, but he managed to take out all these other Democrats, about 12 of them, in that race. And one of the things he got a lot of attention for was volunteering at a Gaza hospital during the war. That earned him a lot of support and a lot of backing. And right now, the polling among Democrats, the New York Times Siena poll this just very recently found that 24% of Democrats support providing additional economic military aid to Israel, while 68 oppose that. So at the point in time where he was supporting the man that was convicted of terrorism, this was some 30 years ago. Since then, he's got this whole other resume that's bringing in a lot of people. And part of that is the way he feels about Israel and what he has said from the pro-Palestinian side of things.
Well, what's interesting, too, about that hospital where he volunteered in Gaza, and OK, if that helps him get elected, fine, so he was volunteering. But what we found out from the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, and ISA, announced shortly after they found an underground tunnel network, including a command and control center from which senior Hamas commanders directed combat beneath the European hospital in Khan Yunis, which is where he was volunteering. I mean, I don't know if he ran on that, too, but that's an interesting detail.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And what's interesting is when you dig into Mr. Hamawy and his role with the Blind Sheikh. And when you dig into it, what you find is when the Blind Sheikh came to the United States, it was well known what this guy was about. Didn't take a ton of research. He was a renowned Islamic scholar. Andy McCarthy says, how did this guy even get a green card to come to the United States? I think that's a phenomenal question. I'd still like to know the answer to. How did immigration authorities get him over here? Well, Mr. Hamawy chose to take a ride with him to Detroit to a conference. The conference was called Towards a Global Islamic Economy. But when Mr. Hamawy gets on the stand as a defense witness, he is asked point blank if he had ever heard Abdul Rahman speak about jihad against America. He replied, no, not against America. Problem, Mr. Hamawy was presented with the transcript that showed the remarks that the Blind Sheikh made at that conference that contradicted what he said on the stand. Then he changed his remarks and claimed that it was taken out of context. He didn't mean jihad in specific. But the New York Post has a video of that conference, and you can see the Blind Sheikh at the time saying that the enemy, we cannot negotiate with the enemy, presumably Israel, in reconciliation, sitting down, or negotiations. Islam does not approve of any of that. So this guy sits down with the Blind Sheikh, a well-known scholar at the time, listens to him say no negotiations, talk about jihad, sits on the witness stand, lies. He's never charged with perjury. And his team says, oh, sorry, it was all taken out of context, a misunderstanding. No, no, no. You want to be a United States congressman? I have bare minimums. No Nazi tattoos, no defense witness for the Blind Sheikh. And the list goes on and on and on. And the list tends to be on the left. There's some problems on the right. Yes, and we can get into those. But there's a long list with the progressive candidates of problems that need to be addressed that are disqualifying in my mind.
I haven't asked this really since they put Kamala Harris, you know, atop the ticket 2 falls ago. But I'm asking it again now. Who's in charge of this party? Is it Hakeem Jeffries? I mean, I'm curious to know, who is a person who wants to court people with not just a Nazi symbol, but the one that the people wore at the concentration camps as Jews were dying? They were the guards. That's the symbol that he wore for 20 years and said he didn't know what it was. Graham Plattner, who's running for Senate in Maine.
Are you looking to me for an answer? Because I surely don't have one. But I do have a commentary on the lack of an answer. This is a party that we need to be clear-minded could win the House, should win. If you look at typical polling, the party out of power should win the House and could win the Senate. Think of how dangerous that is without a leader. Without a leader, this party will be all over the place, injecting crazy thoughts into our country. And that is almost more frightening than if they had a leader who is leading somewhat centered policies.
Kamala said she's not the leader of the party. You know,
she didn't have to tell us,
said
did
that
she, Kennedy?
when she was asked point blank, which is embarrassing for her. She didn't have the confidence to do that. And now there's a fight for the soul of the party, and you've got the Wonder Twins, Bernie and AOC, on the left side. And, you know, so far with candidates like this, they're winning the battle. That should terrify every rational voter in the country.
And do you see a reopening of the border if they take the House? Democrats?
I mean, Beto, luckily, is no longer in Congress. Otherwise, he'd be tearing it down with his bare hands.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Between dental appointments.
The one quick comment I have going back to this race specifically, and reading in Politico, there was a line that stood out to me. None of Hamaway's opponents, though, ever spent any money to drive down Hamaway's favorables. This is an inter-party problem. They need to get to the bottom of who their candidates are and actually challenge each other. Or you're going to have these problems like we're going to talk about Plattner a little bit later on, where if you have to go after the people in your own party and address who they are, figure out who they are before it all comes out later on in races.
And you see that in California with Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco. They went at it, and then one emerges, you know.
Yeah, so interesting. You know who said the same thing as Senator Tuberville? Tommy Tuberville was saying, yeah, they're not vetting their own people, and it's really catastrophic for them politically and the country, depending on whether or not they win. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.